My brain is telling me that if I don't put this chemical in my body, I'm going to die. Everything is different. And so your body gets used to a different way to live. Without meaning in our life, there's no point in living. You have to have something greater to believe in. You have to have something bigger. And for us, that's God, that's Jesus.
Good morning, Jake. Great to connect with you again. I think last time we spoke, we were talking about how the mind of an addict works differently than a person that doesn't struggle with addiction. Can you tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on that?
There's a really interesting video that we play here for the guys and for the families while they're here. It's called Pleasure Unwoven. He's a doctor, and he has a really good example of kind of what the difference is between somebody who is an addict and alcoholic versus somebody who's not. And the example that he provides is he has a shot glass in front of an alcoholic. And the example is, if you take this shot and you drink it, there's a gun and it's going to shoot you and you're going to die. So for a normal person, you would obviously you wouldn't drink that. For an addict and alcoholic, your thought process is, well, I wonder if I can drink that and the gun won't fire. Or maybe he's lying. Or maybe, there's not any bullets in that gun. Now you may still not drink that, but your thoughts are not the same progressive thoughts as a normal person. You're still going to try to rationalize and justify what could or could not happen in that moment. So for an addict, you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking about the trauma, the stress. You're not thinking about anything else except for, my brain is telling me that if I don't put this chemical in my body, I'm going to die. So, and the good correlation with that is when guys go through withdrawals, they are feeling horrible because they've stopped drinking or they stopped using and they feel bad. It's their body is kind of telling him, hey, I'm dying, and you know how to fix this. If you just take that drink or you use that drug, you will feel better. And so that's why it's so difficult for us to stop using, is that it's a brain disease for a reason. It convinces you to kill yourself, and to kill yourself using drugs and alcohol, because it makes you think that if you don't use it, well, your life's not worth living and you're going to die anyway. So let's just drink and let's use. That's going to make your life better, and all the trauma and everything that you've gone for. This has worked in the past. Whenever you've gone through some things, you've had some drinks or you've used some drugs and you felt better, right? You felt better. And that was true at one point long, long ago. That did work for us. And it did make us feel better temporarily. But that fades away, and soon you go into that despair of addiction, and then it stops working, but you're still convinced that it will. And so you keep doing it over and over and over again.
That sounds very challenging, because changing physical habits is certainly one thing, but changing brain patterns and thought patterns, that's a whole other challenge. How do you start to address this with an addict that comes into the program? And how do you advise them on building more of a healthy thought process for themselves and for their own survival?
There's really only two difficult points for an addict's recovery as far as it has to do with treatment. So the first difficult point is making that decision to want to go to treatment. That's the most difficult part. But once you do that and you get into treatment is actually not that difficult. And what I mean by that is that you are taking yourself out of the environment that you were in, that you were using. So your easy access to drugs and alcohol is gone. Your communication with those that are not good for you, that's gone. You are now surrounded with people with like-minded human beings that know how you feel, that know what you're going through because they're going through it too, or they've already gone through it. And you're working with professional therapists that can walk you through all of those things. So being in treatment is actually fairly easy. You're in a bubble state. The second difficult part is when you leave treatment. And when you leave treatment with no aftercare plan, with no follow-up or anything like that, you just right back into the environment that you came from. So what we try to do when guys get here, they've already accepted the fact that they need help because they're with us. And so we've kind of crossed that bridge. Now what we're trying to do is we're just trying to change those habits, and we're trying to work through some of that trauma that leads you to use it. So once you get into a safe environment, you get up in the morning, your schedule changes. You go to breakfast at a different time. You're in a different place. You're sleeping in a different area. You have a roommate. Your schedule is different. Everything is different. And so your body gets used to a different way to live. Now, that's not going to be the same when you leave, because when you leave, you're going to have a new place to sleep. You're going to have a new schedule. Everything's going to be different again. But what we're trying to do is you have somebody here with you that can hold your hand and walk you through this process of changing everything. So It is about habits. You are hopefully already through the withdrawals, the physical symptoms have kind of passed, and now we're dealing with some of the mental stuff. So changing the habits, changing what you do every day, who you hang out with, that's part of the process. And the longer that you're in that, whether that's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, the higher your chances are. So obviously, Rob's Ranch, we go all the way up to a 90-day program. 90 days is what we recommend because that gets you out of your environment for the longest amount of time and has a chance to really retrain your body. During that retraining, though, you are working through some of the memories that you have with a therapist who can be there to walk you through all those things and can work through the trauma and everything that you've experienced for why you use or drink in the first place. Once you do that, you're training yourself on how to process those traumas, how to process those life experiences. Because when you get out of here, just because you get sober and you went to treatment doesn't mean that your life is perfect whenever you leave. You're still going to go through life on life's terms. And when you go through those incidents, you lose a parent, you get fired from your job, you have a bad drive home, somebody cuts you off. There's a million different things that can happen in everyday life that an addict has always just used or drank to work through those times. Well, if that's off the table, then you have to have a replacement. And that's where the therapy comes in, and it teaches you some processes of things to do to kind of calm yourself down, to get through that moment. It's all about getting through that moment. You say it's one day at a time. I know when I was in treatment, it wasn't just one day at a time. I was at a minute at. I was just trying to make it through the next minute. Of that, I was in a new place. I didn't want to be here. I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I just wanted to make it through the next minute. Well, the longer that you're in recovery, those minutes turn to hours, and those hours turn to days, and those days turn to months, and then to years. And the more time that you have, the easier it is for you to process things like a normal person. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to work through the past traumas to train you how to work through future traumas.
So what comes to mind to me is there's some leadership behind that. If somebody doesn't know how to do something, leadership comes from being in a program, but then support and leadership would come through the people that they're interacting with and their faith. Would you say that's accurate? Where's this leadership going to continue from?
Yeah, so whenever you come to treatment, you're going to meet individuals on a different progression in their path. So you're on day 1, but your roommate may be on day 5. He may be on day 30, but you're going to have guys that you're going to be surrounded with that have a little bit more time than you or a lot more time than you. And the staff are obviously going to have a little bit more time than others, and your therapists are probably going to have decades of recovery time. And so it is about leaning on those individuals that have gone through what you're going through. And at Rob's Ranch, as being a Christian facility, that's that different aspect that we have. It's about body and mind and spirit. But some programs forget about the spirit. It's like sitting on a two-legged stool. If you sit on a two-legged stool, it's going to fall over. You got to have that third leg, and that's the spirit. So when you go through Rob's Ranch, you are learning about how to heal your body. You're eating right, working out, going to sleep at a decent hour. Your mind is being worked on by some professionals. That's all happening. But then you have the spiritual aspect. If you could do it on your own, you wouldn't be at Rob's Ranch. You have to have something greater to believe in. You have to have something bigger. And for us, that's God, that's Jesus, that's what it's about. And so we have a chaplain here. We have a spiritual program that goes along with it to help guide you. And with that, you're going to learn that your life is more than what you think that it is, and that there's more to it than just surviving. There's something bigger for you in this world. And one of the cool things that I get to see is when guys get here on day 1, they are broken. They are most likely having one of the worst days, of their life. They're having to go to treatment. This is in their mind, this is one of the worst times. But I'm over here smiling because I know that today is the first day of the rest of their life. And I know what God has in store for you after this. And I know what's going to happen. They don't know that. And so they're kind of looking at me, I'm smiling, and they think that's weird because, I'm having a good time. They're not. But I remember what it's like on day 1. And I remember what happens on day 30 and 60 and 90 and then year 10. I remember, I know. And part of that process is finding a spiritual side of it, finding something greater than yourself to believe in, so you can understand that what your life is for. Without meaning in our life, there's no point in living.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate everything we talked about, and I'll connect again with you soon. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.